In this video, I really want to talk about fishing flutter spoons for bass. Now, I know that a lot of you guys have probably heard of guys fishing these big spoons for bass, but I also know that not a ton of anglers have gone out there and spent time fishing these. Now, I am by no means an expert at fishing the flutter spoon, but I have put some time behind the wheel with this bait, and there are a few key things that I've learned over the last several years that I think helped me to be a better spoon fisherman. And in this video, we're gonna talk about that. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. If you guys notice the shirt that I'm wearing right now, I just got these in. They were kind of supposed to be my 4th of July special, but they came a little bit late. So if you buy them today, you might be able to get them by the 4th. But anyways, this is my tri-blend t-shirt. So to me, this is the most comfortable t-shirt you will ever wear. I put my bass, my American flag bass, the same one that's on my hat, on here. It's a 2-color t-shirt. Anyways, I'm going to leave a link down below in the description. If you want to pick up a shirt, you will know that it will greatly help support this channel. All right, let's talk about spoon fishing, specifically flutter spoon fishing, because flutter spoons are a little bit different than a jigging spoon, although you can use a jigging spoon in some of the same situations as a flutter spoon. But in this video, I really want to talk about flutter spoons. And there's a number of different flutter spoons out there on the market. And that's actually the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to these baits, is that these baits, although they all kind of look similar, I'm going to hold up a few here. Although they all kind of look similar, I have found that all of these baits are very different. You know, it's odd to me because it's like it's a piece of metal with some hooks hanging off of it, but they all act very, very differently. And the best thing that you can do is simply go out there, test out a few, and see which ones that you like. Now, with that being said, I will tell you a few things. I'm trying to figure out where to put these without getting hooked. You know, this has become one of my favorite ones. This is the worldwide spoon. And the thing that I like about this spoon, if you watch this on Mega Live, you will see that this bait falls backwards a lot. You know, some of these baits, for example, this used to be one of my favorites. This is a little 4-inch Strike King Sexy spoon. I really like this bait, and I like the 5.5 inch version of this a lot, but these particular baits do not fall near as far back as this bait right here. Now, you may be saying, well, why is that important, or is there a difference in fish catching? And yes, there can be. And the biggest reason is that this particular spoon was made in part because of James Watson. He does something a little bit different with his spoons, and he likes to fish them a lot in and around big marina docks. Now, with that being said, if you have a bait like this that really goes backwards a lot, like this thing, honestly, for every foot that it falls down, it almost looks like it goes back a 1/2 foot to a foot. Like if you watch it on the Mega Live, it literally like goes backwards a lot. So if you are fishing docks, or you're fishing an area where it would be good to get some extra distance, like this is a great bait that can help you to catch more fish, because it's going to get deeper down under that dock, a lot of times where the fish are. Now, if you fish this exact same spoon right here, it is not going to get nearly as far back into a dock as I know that this one will. Now, am I saying that that's always important? No, because sometimes, you know, you may be fishing these baits on an offshore ledge, for example, and you don't necessarily need the bait to go backwards a lot in those situations. So what I'm saying is that these spoons are very different in nature. And the other thing that I want to talk about is size. As you can see right here, this is a really important component. These things are relatively similar. You can see that this one's definitely wider, which is why I think it actually slips back so far. But also look at some of these other spoons. You know, here is a big old, what is this? The Ben Parker spoon. I have not put a lot of hours on this particular spoon. Definitely not this one, because it's brand new. But I have fished this bait. And what I've learned about these really big spoons like this is, do not waste your time with these big spoons if your fish do not feed on gizzard shad, okay? And this is probably not always the case. Like, there's definitely going to be some outliers, But it seems like if you go to lakes where you have bass that eat a lot of gizzard shad, you know, you're fishing the Tennessee River lakes, you're fishing maybe a little bit more in the south. If you know that your bass eat gizzard shad, that's really when this particular bigger spoon, this 8 to 10 inch, I think they even have a bigger version, spoon are really going to come into play. And so, and even more so if those fish are, you know, over 5 pounds. Like if it can take, you know, 20, 25, 30 pounds of wind on your tournament lakes that you fish, that's where this thing might come in handy. The big thing that I found is that, you know, for me, I even fish around some bass that eat gizzard shad, but it's not their primary thing that they eat, for example. And this bait, it's just too big for them. Like you might get a couple of fish to come up there and hit it, but you know, you're fishing for, you know, I'm fishing for 2 pounders, 3 pounders. And I'm not saying that this bait can't catch that size fish, but this is really a bigger fish bait. Like to me, 5, 6 pounders, 7 pounders that are eating gizzard shad, this is the bait that you want to throw. So don't get caught up trying to be the hero out there, trying to swing for the fence, because a lot of times with this particular spoon, you might be trying to swing for the fence and you're going to strike out every single time. And so that's why I really kind of started to love the 4 and 5 inch spoons, because they, to me, work a little bit more all over the country. For example, the Strike King 4 inch right here, the worldwide spoon. This is another spoon that I actually have started to really love. And the big thing about this spoon, this is the Dixie Jet spoon. And guys, I'll leave all these spoons down below if you want to take a look at them. But this particular spoon, you can see, is a lot different than the other ones in the way that it has hooks all over it. And this is the biggest problem with these baits, is that they are a fish losing machine, which sucks, but it just is what it is. The thing about these spoons is that they a lot of times are going to entice a bite from a fish that won't bite almost any other bait out there. And it has something to do with the way that these spoons are. There's nothing in our tackle boxes that can really, replicate the way that these spoons fall. You know, a lot of times when you throw these things out, they are just twisting and flopping and going backwards. And 95% of your hits are going to come when this thing is just going backwards, just going all over the place, because these things put out beams of light, like they move a lot of water. Truly, when the bass are on these, you will not catch the same caliber fish on anything else. Like these baits can be the best. Now, with that being said, you lose a lot of fish on these bad boys. And I have messed around with my rod and reel and line configuration a lot. And what I found is that this particular Dixie Jet right here is definitely the best when it comes to simply hooking up with fish and landing fish. And that's kind of obvious, right? The thing has a ton of treble hooks hanging all over it. Now, the only thing that I don't love about this particular bait is it doesn't quite have the movement that some of these other spoons have. When you drop it in the water, you know, some of these spoons, you will literally feel them pulsing backwards as they're whoo, whoo, whoo. This one, it does do that, but not near as much. So it doesn't have quite the action. So I don't know that it's always going to get more bites, but it does seem like if you hook up with a fish on this bait, a lot of times you are getting that fish in the boat. And that is very, very important, especially if you are a tournament fisherman. So the Dixie Jet, I mean, it's a good little bait. I really like it, but they all have their kind of flaws with them. And so with that being said, though, little things that I do like to do, for example, with this worldwide that I have rigged up right here, this actually comes standard with a little stinger hook on it. I actually replace the stinger hook with just my own stinger. I put about a 1-inch section of 50-pound braid and a small, this is a 6/0 treble hook on it. So that just basically what it does is it hangs about the middle of this bait, this a little bit under the middle. So when a bass comes up to hit it, I feel like the chances of it getting a good hook in him definitely go up. Simply doing that and changing out the hook that this worldwide spoon comes with is definitely very, very key. So guys, those are a couple of big things with the spoon. Now, another thing that I want to talk about when it comes to these spoons is a little bit on the equipment. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about rod, reel, line, because I don't feel like I have it dialed in enough to be able to tell you. This one right here, I'm fishing it on 20-pound straight fluorocarbon. This is a 7'6" medium heavy power. It's kind of a moderate fast action rod. It's not quite fast, it's not quite moderate. This one has been a really good rod for me with fluorocarbon. If I go to braid, then I typically like a lot more moderate action. But I really, honestly, if I'm being truthful, which I always am, I haven't decided if I like using braid to fluorocarbon leader versus just straight fluorocarbon. I'm tending to lean more on straight fluorocarbon these days. But with that being said, the big thing with these spoons is the way that they are made, they are going to completely twist at times. When they are falling backwards, they're falling like this, and they will completely twist over like that. So if you are not using at least one swivel on your line, you're going to accumulate a lot of line twist, which is no fun, especially when you're using straight fluorocarbon. So a lot of times I'm going to have not only this particular barrel swivel up here, but what you can also do, and I don't have it set up right here because I threw this on last minute to try to catch some fish and I didn't have the whole setup. But anyways, put another swivel about a foot up your line. You know, if you're using braid to fluorocarbon, you can actually attach braid to that swivel and then fluorocarbon the rest of the way. To me, I just like to have it to help with the line twist. So I'll have fluorocarbon to a swivel to fluorocarbon to the spoon, even with another swivel on it. So it's a lot of swivels, but I'm telling you what, the way that these things are made, they're going to twist up your line a lot if you don't have those. So guys, those are the spoons. That's kind of what I've learned about these baits. Oh, real quick side note, if you're completely new to this bait, the way that you work this thing is don't overcomplicate it, right? Most of the time I'm letting this thing hit the bottom and I'm whipping it up. It's pretty aggressive. So I'm gonna whip it up and then I let it fall on a semi-slack line. Not completely slack all the time, because I like to have, this is the other reason I like to have fluorocarbon, is because when that bait is falling, that's when you're gonna get your hit. If it's semi-slack with fluorocarbon, you really feel that bite translate through that fluorocarbon and into your rod so that you can lean back and set the hook into the fish. With braid, if you drop too much slack in it and that fish hits it, you won't even feel it. And you're thinking, Ty, you're talking about braid and sensitivity, that should be more. Just trust me on this. If there's slack in your line and a fish pops at, you will not feel it in your rod. So let it fall on a semi-slack line back to the bottom and then whip it back up. The other thing that you can do is if you're fishing around suspended fish, this is going to require the use of a forward-facing sonar, whether that's live scope, mega live, active target, whatever it may be. This is where you're really going to look at the fish and you're going to cast this bait at the fish and let it fall right to the fish and keep it above the fish. A lot of times when I'm working it that way, I'm not making really giant hops like I do on the bottom. It's more like little pulses where I'm just foo, foo, and then bam, they get it. So again, that requires forward-facing sonar to do it effectively. I guess you could do it without it. But guys, that's a spoon. It is a great little bait. It's going to get even better throughout the summer. So pick this thing up now, start getting used to it, start learning it, and I guarantee that you will fall in love with this thing by the end of the summer. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And also, don't forget to check out the fin gear right here. I'll see you tomorrow.